I was so focused on just career. I got to make a lot of money. I got to build my life as a filmmaker. I'm going to go through whatever it takes just to make this happen. And as time went on, I just realized, like, I'm not doing this right. I need to put God first. And I think that we make better films that actually convey these Christian themes in a realistic fashion, how we can make movies that encompass better representations of our faith that seem more real and authentic.
Welcome to the Spencer Whiteout podcast. Rated R.
Criminal charges, bro. It's like we're avoiding the shark. Call it leather fetish, dude.
No, great turbo neck guy.
I'll give you a kiss. You give me your number.
That checked out a ton, dude. Tell me you felt.
We're Americans. We're the ones that are descendants from the 1776 musket-bearing motherfuckers.
Welcome back to the Spencer Whiteout podcast. In this episode, I interview Dillon Vibbart. We talk all about our experiences making feature films, as well as how we as Christians integrate our faith into our filmmaking. Let's dive in. Yeah, so why don't you go ahead and tell me about your early upbringing and getting into film?
Yeah, mine is the most cliche story. Got the home video camera from mom and dad, and me and my older brother, Cody. Him and I disagree on this. I thought he was the one that said, like, let's make a movie, and like that's what started it. He says it was me that did that. I'll take the credit, but I don't remember that's how it going down. I remember him saying, like, no, we're going to make a movie today and you're just going to do it, because I was the younger brother and you just do what your older brother says. We made like a little dumb home movie. I was 6 at the time and he was 9, and we just kept making more of them. And as the years went on, we just kept making more and more and more. And as like a decade flew by, we had made like hundreds of these. And so we just kind of figured early on, like, yeah, this is what we like to do. And of course we had made like features, quote unquote, with the home video camera, and we had partnered with our cousins a lot, and because we always kind of grew up in a tightly knitted family, and so we were making home movies throughout most of our childhood and through our teen years and even our early 20s. We were just trying to make like comedic skits for YouTube, and we just always liked filmmaking, but we had never done like a really big feature film before. Like, we had done features and had screenings, and but again, it was still like that small town. Just, we got the local video camera and we were on the local access channel a lot, and people would be like, hey, we saw you guys like on local access, and that was like the extent of our experience. But none of us had really like delved in and said, like, no, we're actually going to put a lot of money towards making a movie. And that's kind of what led to Social Norm, which was about 10 years ago now, roundabouts, was when I was like, it's time to kind of make that leap. But up until that point, yeah, it was just a bunch of goofing around with the camera, and we tried to get better, just like anybody else would, doing what you like. You don't just want to keep doing the same thing, but it was just fun.
Where did you grow up?
I'm actually in Ventura, California. I'm still in my hometown. I did the LA thing for a couple of years, but yeah, I'm back here. My wife is down here and her family, so staying close to home. But yeah, it's only about 45 minutes north of LA. And so it was always convenient. I remember as a little kid, when you found out that like your favorite actor only lived like half an hour away from you, you were just like, what in the entire world? Like, I'm this close. It almost felt like this predestined thing. Like, yes, I have to be a filmmaker now, because why else would God put me this close to Hollywood? Like, it's just so convenient. There's like so many people.
And then you got to go try to stalk them and find the actors.
Yeah, I'll be like TMZ and outside in the bushes taking pictures.
Right,
where are you located? You're in the Midwest somewhere, aren't you?
Read my lips.
No, man, I'm in Orange County.
Oh, you're in Orange? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't know why I made that. Maybe I was thinking of somebody else, but no, yeah, you're in Orange. All right. Well,
I grew up in Grass Valley, California, which is NorCal. So it's like an hour north of Sacramento. And then kind of like you, I mean, same thing. I was always filming videos just with my mom's like little video camera. And I really got into filmmaking through making skateboarding videos. And as we were getting better at skateboarding, I was getting better at filmmaking. And then I really fell in love with editing as well, because I've always loved music. And so being able to like put music to the clips was just like opened a whole new range of creativity for me. And so I did a lot of that through high school. I never really did, short films or acting stuff, but the skate videos always morphed into way bigger than just skate videos. I was just filming my life, So if like we went to parties and my friend like ripped off his shirt at a party, I'm like, oh, cool, that's going in the skate video. Or, oh, my friend's going to jump off this roof. Okay, we're going to put that in. I just liked the idea of having like cool like effects and stuff. And so one time I was filming this slushie that I got, and it was like these cool colors that were all melding together. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. And then I totally dropped it on accident and it spilled all in the car. And then I was like, all right, cool, that's a good clip. We're going to use that too. So it was just kind of anything and everything that happened. It was just like as hype as possible and edit it together into these skate videos. And then as time went on, I actually went to Biola University. So that's what brought me down to Southern California. And then I studied filmmaking at Biola and did a handful of short films. And I was really chasing kind of the coming of age comedy genre, I guess, at that time. And so that's what kind of led me to be making Space Waves right towards the end of my Biola time.
I was going to say, because a lot of those experiences you just talked about, like I saw that in the movie Space Waves. And I was like, I get the vibe that this is like taken almost as, it's not exclusively autobiographical. It's like, it's semi-autobiographical, where you kind of like, you can tell certain elements are about your life, but they're not exactly about your life. It's the same exact thing with Social Norm. This isn't my life. This is not what happened. But in many ways, like I am that character Norm. I was just kind of playing myself to some extent.
Talk about why you chose to do that film first. Well, I say first, but as your first big feature, because you said that at that time in your life, it struck a chord for you, even though it had been written previously.
Right. Yeah. So when we were doing all these skits with my cousins, we had just gotten off making like a little home movie feature called The Pack Pack. And it's still one of our favorites. We love it. It's hilarious. My cousin Josh wrote and directed that one. And everybody was like, that was great. You just need to kind of up the ante on the production level. And we're like, awesome. So he went to work on this next script. I was going to be the lead, and it was going to be still funny, and it was still going to have all this slapstick humor and be kind of in that YouTube sketch world where it's just doing something stupid. But we're going to go up a level, not just in production quality, but story wise as well, to try to add a level of drama, but let's not go too much into the drama. And then lots of stuff happened. Time went on. I was right around the time of the recession, the 2008 recession. And, we said, like, we don't have time to go delve into this. This would be a commitment. I mean, it was hard to do the home movie stuff, but we all have jobs and, we have girlfriends and we have other obligations. Some of us at school. It's like, there's just too much going on. Let's just keep doing YouTube sketches. So that whole thing got shelved. And then lots of time fast forwarded later, I ended up at Sony Pictures. And I was like, I know while I'm here, I can't just be like doing administrative work. If I'm going to make a movie, now's the time, because I'm going to be networking. I'm going to be making connections. It's like, it's time. I need to do this. And the only script I could think of was that script that Josh had written, which was called Social Norm. And again, I was supposed to just be the lead in it. And I spoke to them about it. I spoke to my cousins and I was like, guys, it's time we do this. But they were still in that world of like, it's a big commitment. We can't take it on. So I asked Josh, like, can I take it on? And can I just direct it? And he said, yeah, sounds good. But in doing that, I said, all right, I looked at the script again and I said, this is still hilarious, but it's just a lot of time had passed since we had made like that YouTube sketch type of material. And we said, like, we're kind of beyond that. If we're going to do this and we're going to spend all this money, we need to do something that has an undertone of seriousness to it. And not for a second did I think it was going to be like all drama, no funny. I still believe that it was going to be a funny movie with some drama undertones, like a good dramedy, if you will. And once I kind of delved into the script, I was like, what is the story here? And then at that time, I had just gone through a lot of career mishaps and just down on my luck and not having a lot of money and just kind of not sure where I wanted to go. And I was like, that's exactly what this character is doing in this movie. Like, that character is me. And so it all just kind of like fit like a glove. It just clicked. And I said, this is the story. And I spent a lot of time reworking it, but keeping a lot of those same elements that Josh had put in, while kind of taking some of the really big slapstick stuff away that would just make it this Naked Gun airplane type of movie where it was like, this is all about the jokes and not about the story. I said, no, the story's got to come first, jokes second. And that swap made it a completely different movie. I don't have any regrets about that. I think that was the right decision to make. As far as the movie and how it turned out, that's a different story. But in terms of just like that story, I was like, that was the story I definitely wanted to tell. And yeah, I think that was the right move. And I still to this day would like to have seen that original version that Josh had written back in the day. Like, that would have been funny, funny if we had done it right then and there, but we dragged our feet, time went on, things changed, and I was looking at the world differently at that time. So it is what it is. But yeah, I'm happy with that story.
Yeah,
so
and you guys are older too, much older. So you kind of have a different perspective when it did come time to actually make it. What was it like directing and also starring in the film?
Oh my gosh. So like, of course I had made home movie features before, like, or directed them myself, but that wasn't with a crew. It was usually just me and my brother and cousin. Like, one's holding the shotgun mic off to the side, forgot to hit record on the boom mic, and like one person's got like maybe a flashlight for gaffing. It's just like really minuscule stuff. But when I started directing, like jumping in with an actual crew is like trial by fire. It was just, you're in the gauntlet now. Like, how do I do this? I was comfortable with the acting. The acting was fine for me. It was actually probably the funnest part, was just like, okay, I get to pretend, it's fun. But what I really wanted to do was be behind the camera more often, just because it was like, all right, this is kind of what I want to do more than in front of the camera. Like, I'm not a naturally gifted actor. I always thought I wanted to be an actor when I was younger, but I said, nah, like directing's my thing. And I think Social Norm was kind of my swan song for acting. It was like, that's it. That's all I had. I can't do character acting. I just have one character and it's this. That's all I've got in me. But as far as, doing the direction on top of that, I had to lean a lot on my DP, AJ, and my co-producer, Matt, to kind of like be my eyes behind the camera. And a lot of times I would do the scene and I'd say like, I think like that felt right, but I would just rely on them to see like, did the lighting look good? How was the sound? I wasn't listening. I was just in the scene. And a lot of it, I just kind of assumed we got it, because I was like, we don't have time for me to watch playback. Yeah. It's like, I either felt like it was good or it wasn't. And I'm relying on my DP and co-producer to tell me, did that look okay for camera? And if there was a question, of course, we'd go watch playback. But a lot of times it was just good. And I feel good about that. And let's move on. And that's why I don't want to be the person that has to always rely on somebody else to do the directing for me. Again, it was still like, I want the shot here. This is what's going to happen. Still guiding what's going on, but it's just within the take, I'm kind of like helpless.
You're like flying blind a little bit.
Yeah, it was something where I was like, I don't want to do that again for my next projects. And I haven't ever since that. And I would never say like no to acting ever again, but I don't think I'd do an acting directing thing again. If I did, it wouldn't be the lead. I know that much. I'd definitely be like a side character and do like a scene. But yeah, that'd be it.
And also sometimes it's like, do you want to watch playback or do you want to just run another take? Because they both take the same amount of time.
Yeah, you're constantly racing the clock and you don't have time to always just be like, let's just think about this shot more and more. No, like you either get it or you're going to waste the other half of your day. Like one of the lessons I've learned recently is that put all your need to have shots at the beginning of the day. Like get those first. Do all the nice to haves at the latter half of the day, because the latter half of the day is the like flip of the coin. You don't know if you'll have time or you won't. But the ones you absolutely need to get, like do those first and do them immediately. I didn't do a shot list for Social Norm. I just came in because, home movie style was just, we show up with the camera and the camera looks like it'd be cool over here. And like, that sounds good. And I know some big filmmakers do that, but now I don't do that at all. I come in with a shot list and I have it ironclad, like we're going to be here, 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 here. And I want it done by this time, this time, this time. And I'm very like meticulous about that now, just because I'm like, I have it in my head what's supposed to happen and where we're supposed to be and make sure we're gonna get this all done. Because with Social Norm, it was just like camera over there, I think, and I think that'll be good. And this is kind of what's gonna happen. But yeah, I didn't have that mapped out at all for the feature. So it was a complete scramble. Did you do that for Space Waves at all? Was it kind of this shot list, or was, I think I saw in some behind the scenes you did have a shot list, but it seemed like it was a lot more guerrilla filmmaking going on with that film.
I mean, it was kind of a combination of everything. I mean, we thought we were prepared, I mean, we tried to be as prepared as possible with the shot list and stuff. But sometimes, like, for instance, we would get kicked out of a location and we would have to go across the street and film it there, or, things would happen. So then the entire shot list would essentially just get shredded, and we'd have to just improvise on the fly, or like an actor didn't show up, or we didn't have extras show up at the school. So then we had to rewrite the entire school scene that day. We were like, okay, we have no students here, even though we were supposed to have students. So what are we going to do? How about instead we'll just shoot in the hallway and we're going to rewrite the scene. We're going to have Duke running around the hallway trying to stop the teachers from getting into the classroom. And then we'll shoot interior classroom down at Biola when we can get some more people. Because up in NorCal, it was very hard to get extras or actors at all, you know? And so it was very much just getting our friends and family and stuff and just begging people to be a part of the film. And every day was crazy. Every day we wrapped late except for one day, and it was just a struggle to even get it done. I was going to say there was one thing that I was reminded of was you need to just go with what works in the moment rather than be so married to what was written on the page, because sometimes it's two different things.
Yeah, I hear you. Like, and a lot of times that can happen when you get to the editing room and you realize that something you thought for sure was going to work, and you realize when you watch it back, you go, this doesn't work at all. One of my short films I did recently, we had a sequence that is in this really tight hallway, and the main actress comes out at the end of the hallway, and it's supposed to be like this moment where she steps forward, and I wanted to push the camera in closer to her, like we're going to do a push, like a dramatic, like here she is. And it was like tight quarters, trying to get this crew in there, and my DP's like sweating and just trying to get the camera to move. And we were killing time trying to get this shot. And I was like, we got to have the shot, man. Like, I've had this shot in my head. We got to get it. Let's do it. The DP's like, all right, man, like you're the director. Like, we'll go through it. We're killing time. We're going to suffer later when we're trying to get other shots. We eventually got it, but it took us like, I don't know how many takes. And I get to the editing room and I don't even use that shot. We went through this entire process of like, I'm going to get this shot. And I didn't even use it because I was like, yeah, it doesn't work here. What is that? Like, it was so clear in my head that this was going to be used. And then once I get to the editing room, I'm like, I'm not going to use that shot. Like, I'm just going to cut to the wide. It looks better. And yeah, we could have saved so much time. That's where I can think just a little bit of humility when you go onto a film set, and understanding that if you have a vision, of course you should fight for that vision as much as you can, but you also need to have that humility to understand that not every decision you make is the right decision. Sometimes it's better to listen to your DP or listen to your actor or your producer or whoever it is, take their advice, and you still have final say as the director, but take some of that humility to understand that you're not going to be perfect at every single thing that's going to happen on set. Sometimes they were right. And I've had that proven to me, I don't know how many times. And the most recent shoot I just did, I just kind of walked in and was like, anybody had a suggestion? I was like, I'm all ears. Yeah. Anybody has a suggestion, I will take into consideration. You've got to reevaluate your initial inclinations a lot when you're on set, and just understand that you're not always right. Or sometimes the other person was right. And it's good to have that as a director.
And also, there's ways you can set yourself up for future success, such as in Samson's Lot in Space Waves, we decided to bump up the frame rate for a handful of the shots because we were like, oh, maybe we'll use super slow-mo later. And that really saved us because Samson's Lot wasn't really working. It was kind of a weird scene. And we were like, okay, well, let's just like have them running with the shopping cart towards the camera and just put it in super slow-mo and make it really dramatic and kind of over the top. And that saved us there. And the super slow-mo saved us in a lot of other places too, where it was like, hey, when you can, roll at a higher frame rate, and then you have the option later to do some cool, you know, music video montage style stuff with slow motion. And sometimes we even had like slow motion, then we'd have jump cuts and things like that. And I think that really helped in giving us more freedom in the edit. And also a thing we did, which was rolling early. So like in the Girthinator scene, when they're talking to the Girthinator on his podcast, we actually rolled early, and I was talking to the actors saying, all right, you're going to do this and you're going to do this and blah, 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 blah. And they were all sitting there nodding. And so they're all sitting there nodding. And then they finally get into the scene. But we found that beginning part in the edit, and we were like, oh, what if we have like a theme song for Girthinator? And they're all sitting there nodding to the theme song. And so we totally found that in the edit, and we were able to have a creative solution when in reality it was like they were just nodding to my direction, like me talking to them. But then we used it for the film, and it was like no one would ever know that that's what was actually going on.
I've had that happen actually quite a few times. I don't know how you do it if you're kind of the traditionalist when it comes to calling action and cut on set. Like a lot of directors will do all right, do the slate, get in position, everyone gets set, action, they go through, cut. All right, regardless if it was a good take or bad take, you cut no matter what. For me, I don't do that. What I like to do is always just, all right, get the camera in position. And a lot of times, like if we're racing, I haven't even given time to explain to the actor what's happening yet. So we're rolling a lot before the action even takes place. But I have all this extra footage of like, there I am in the frame explaining to the actor what's going on. And then I roll and run behind the camera. Then I yell action, they do it. And usually what I do is I don't yell cut until I feel like we got one solid one in the tank. Of course, we're shooting digital. I don't shoot on film just because, film is incredibly expensive and hard to deal with. And just for indie filmmaking, I don't know too many indie filmmakers that shoot on film. It's kind of a rare thing these days. But yeah, for digital, it's like, all right, I have all this hard drive space and I'm more concerned about making sure we get the shot right away, because when you yell cut, everyone stops, you got to reset, you got to swing the slate back in, you got to explain to the actor what's going on. They've kind of come out of the scene a little bit. Everyone's kind of shuffling around. So-and-so went to go get some crafty real quick, or so-and-so ran to get whatever. Then
makeup has to run in and touch up.
Last looks and all this stuff. Whereas to me, I'm like, all right, still rolling. Let's do it again. Action. Do it again. Action. And then once I feel like we got one, and I always check with my DP, like, are you happy? Are you happy? Okay. Cut. Now we will cut. But in doing so and having all this excess footage, there's been a lot of moments where a lot of that, you can call it B-roll, if you will. I've used those little snippets just like you did in my film. I actually just did it again with my most recent one. I'm in the editing room with it. There was a moment where it was in between kind of the actions, and my actress was doing this thing like stretching her neck out. And I was like, I really like that. That's like perfect for this moment. So I used that clip. And I've done that so many times with my other projects. So I have all this excess footage, because you never know sometimes what you're going to end up using. So
yeah, I really would like to do it that way in the future, the way you described. And I think that will be a good way to do it. But you just got to be transparent with your crew and talk with them about the way you want to do things.
The shot's still the shot. It's one thing if it's a complicated setup and you have to do a lot of motion. That's maybe a different story. But the biggest burden in doing that method of just like letting it go and doing rolling takes is on the editor, because the editor's going to have to go in and watch the entire thing and cut it, segment it. But my counter argument to that is they have to watch all the footage anyway. It's like one extra step. I mean, by one extra step, I mean literally it is just a step. It's just click, cut right there. And then now you have two separate clips. I mean, I'm assuming we all use some sort of editing software that allows you to easily do that. So I get it's probably not for every single film shoot. Of course, I wouldn't recommend this for anybody that shoots on 35 or on film. Yeah, that would definitely be, you're wasting a lot of money doing that. But if you have the hard drive space, which presumably you would, you prep everything for the shoot. And then when you get to post, you're like, all right, I can kind of take my time now, because when I'm on set, I got so many things to account for in terms of like, I got the food showing up at this time. I got so-and-so that's got to be out of here by this time. So-and-so is not going to show up to here. And I'm all about conserving the time of all the shots I need to get for the day. And to me, I'm like, every time we yell cut, it's just killing more time. And it's like, let's just do it real quick and do it till we get it. I like Fincher's films a lot. I think he's a very talented director, but I keep hearing about how he does like 100 takes in every film he does. And I'm like, that's crazy. That's crazy to me. I need only about 2 or 3 good ones that I feel really good about, and then I move on. And those little idiosyncrasies that maybe he's looking for and maybe makes him the director he is, sure. But I'm just like, there's no way that makes sense. If it takes you 100 takes to get something, like something is fundamentally wrong with how you set this up. Like, that's crazy. I can see like the most I've ever done, I think, was 15. And that's when like it was a complicated rigging. We had a whole jib and a swooping motion, and it was like, all right, and the timing had to be right, and it was a complicated setup. But that was like 15 takes. And we did a bunch of rehearsals before that to try to get that right. But it's like, why are you doing 100 takes for? That's just crazy to me. But anyway.
How many crew members did you have on Social, Norm?
Yeah, not including the cast. I think there was about 10 of us, 10 or 12 crew members altogether. Very basic skeleton crew of just one person per department. Yeah, it was still bare bones kind of skeleton. I had never worked with any of them before. They were all brought in by my co-producer. My co-producer, Matt, was the first person I came to. And I hadn't really even made a film with him prior to that. I hadn't done like a short sketch with him. I gave him like one scene. It was kind of an impromptu thing. And I stayed in touch with him. And then I saw that he was making kind of these indie features. And I said, like, I want to bring this guy on board to kind of help make this production happen. And once he came on board, he was like, I got the guys, I'll figure it all out. He really did a lot for the project. He really kind of like held my hand through it, just kind of like, this is what you're going to be doing as the director. And I was like, okay, got it. But it really was, again, trial by fire, just trying to talk to a crew, because it's the first time I had really worked with a crew. It was always just me and my brother and cousins up to that point, just making stuff. And, you know, maybe like a friend or something like that would always show up for a shoot, but never of like, I'm in charge of a team. Now I'm like, I got to like really be like, okay, the camera's there and I got to do this. And, you know, it was interesting. A good learning lesson. Absolutely.
Did you do anything to rally the troops? Because I know for us on Space Waves, we had hype speeches every day before we shot. It was someone would give a hype speech, you know, and it would be either something inspirational or a funny story or a word of encouragement to everybody. And that would always be awesome. It was like every day we started with a hype speech and then we'd chant Space Waves quantity force. We'd be like, Space Waves. Space waves. And that like helped build the team bonding experience.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw the behind the scenes Beast Mode documentary you made about the making of that movie. And I saw that and I was like very envious of that camaraderie because it just seemed like you genuinely were making a movie with your friends. It seemed like you guys were having fun and like this is the process of making the movie. And like Social Norm was fun to make. Don't get me wrong. Like I had a good time making the movie. But a lot of it was just like stress and all these people that I didn't know. And it was like, okay, I'm in charge of this team. And for me, I didn't get to do a lot of like, all right, we're all going to come together and we're all going to have a fun time. Because, you know, when I see you guys on your set, it literally just seems like you're just hanging out with your buddies. And I was like, that seems like a great time. But to me, it was like, I don't know any of you. You're all strangers to me. And we got to make a film. And overall, again, like there was no like weirdness on set per se. It was just like, we're all here making a movie. This is pretty cool. And what made it fun was, you know, my brother and cousins were in the film. It was always the vehicle for us to make this movie. And, you know, spending time with them, we kind of brought a lot of levity to the set. And we were making a comedy at the end of the day. It was still like jokes and there was a lot of laughs. And it's always sad when a film wraps because I remember my assistant director, kind of this dark comment he made. He said, this is the last time this crew will ever make the same movie again. And I was just like, geez, man, that's quite dark.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah. I think it was his way of just being like, appreciate it now. But it was just like, man, you have to be so dark about it. But being an assistant director is a thankless job. I can tell you that. Like that, they're just always harping on everybody, but it's their job just to, you got to be here. Everyone shut up. Everyone quiet. Everyone get like that's. Yeah, I don't want that job.
So on my next film, I want to give the first AD a literal whip. I think that'll really work.
There's gonna be a lot of scars on that movie set.
Yeah, give them like a stopwatch and a whip, you know, because my dad has whips downstairs in the basement. That sounds weird, but my dad's a collector of all kinds of weapons and swords and guns and all that stuff. So imagine that the first AD gets a whip and it's like, hey, if you're out of line,
if you need your actors to do a stunt and they don't want to do it, you're like, all right, man, you're gonna get the whip instead.
You're gonna get the whip.
Are you allowed to talk about what this next film is, or is this still under wraps?
Yeah, so the next film, it is kind of under wraps. It's called but
I know what it's called. I'm going to post about it online.
Yeah. But I will talk to you about that a little bit more when we talk about short films and, you know, your proof of concepts and stuff, because I've been inspired by you and what you're doing with that. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about kind of my future plans next. But how about we talk about, is there any craziest moments from on set with Social Norm? Otherwise, we can move on to your time at Sony.
I think the one that was just kind of like really, I can't believe this is happening, was we were shooting like a garage sale scene. And of course, the neighbors across the street left their dog tied up at the garage. The garage door was open and the dog was just barking the entire time. And of course, our sound was just like, I can't get anything. So we were like, I got to go either tell the neighbors to put their dog away or something.
Put their dog down.
Yeah. Can you kill your dog, please? But yeah, I was like, all right, we got to figure out something. So one of the actors walked over there to try to be like, let's make it friendly with everybody. And, you know, because once it gets friendly with everybody, it'll stop barking, you know, in this grand wisdom of this person. So yeah, walks over, unchains the neighbor's dog, walks it over, you know, it stops barking miraculously somehow, like, and the actor brings it over, holding it in its arms. I was in the middle of like doing a bunch of other stuff. I didn't even know this was happening at the time. I was just kind of like, what's happening over there? And before I know it, like I see the dogs like over in our driveway. And then as like I'm realizing all this, I see the actor handing the dog to my assistant director, because I think my assistant director was like, give me the dog. We can't just steal people's dogs from their house. True. And as it was being transferred to my assistant director, the dog snaps and just starts biting at my assistant director's face. And like literally like causes my assistant director to bleed, like bites its cheek. And I'm just like, oh my. And the dog like falls. I don't even know what happened to the dog. I was like, I don't even care about the dog right now. I care about my assistant director because he's now like, he's just been attacked. Yeah, it was just one of those dumb
chunk
moments.
Out of his cheek.
Yeah, pretty much. I remember I just ran with him to the bathroom and I was just like bandaging him up. I'm like, dude, do we need to get you to a hospital? And he was like, no, dude, I'm fine. He's like, it was just a dumb thing. Let's just go assess and see if this dog is still alive or if it ran away, if we're going to be sued, you know, for killing someone's dog. So I go out there expecting the worst. I'm like, what happened to the dog, man? Because my director is like two-faced right now. I'm missing half of it. And they're like, oh yeah, the neighbors came out and they put him inside. I'm like, like we could have done that.
Try that first.
I know we could have done that from the beginning. You bunch of morons. It was just one of those really frustrating moments where you're like, why is this happening? Yeah, that's probably the craziest thing.
Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, right?
Pretty much.
So I got a dog story from Space Waves. It's not my story. It's my producer's story, Andrew. So basically, when we went to shoot the forest scene with the chicken out in the forest,
yeah.
Andrew had to go pick up the chicken because we were all going to the forest to set up, and Andrew was like, okay, I'll go get the chicken, which was like a family friend's chicken. And so he goes to the house and there's no one there. He knows where the chicken is. It's like in a cage, you know, but then there's this guard dog that's like barking and like just growling at Andrew and will not let him through the gate to get the chicken. And so Andrew's like, what do I do? How do I get this? You know? Mm-hmm. So Andrew decided to park his truck on the other side of the property, like the other side of the fence, and blast squirrel noises from YouTube from his truck speakers. And then the dog went over to the truck, and then Andrew runs over, grabs the chicken, pops out by the time the dog comes back. And so we got the chicken. Sometimes you got to improvise, you know?
Yeah.
So why don't you tell me about your time at Sony? It sounds very exciting, but it also was you delivering coffees.
Yes. You want to relive my trauma and my horrible experiences now? No, I had actually interned for them initially back in 2008. And that was my first impression of Hollywood, really, was that internship. It was a semester in the fall of 2008. And my first day was on the scoring stage of them scoring the new Star Trek. And J.J. Abrams was there. And Michael Giacchino, the composer, who at the time I didn't know who that was. I was like, Michael Gia, who? Whole orchestra. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm the guy that makes home movies with his brother and his cousins. I am in the wrong spot. You know, I meet J.J. Abrams. And then like the next day I meet like Alfred Molina and just like all these people. And I'm just like, I don't, what am I doing here? And then after you've met a few celebrities, you're just kind of like, all right, what do they need me to do? And you realize like how much stress and pressure is in that environment. And you go to Sony and you go into on a professional lot and you realize, oh, this is a very stressful, high intensity place to work. And the movie magic part is gone. We are on assembly line of making movies. So after that internship was over, I was kind of like, this really sobered my experience with making movies. I don't even know if I want to do this because it just was so not what I thought it was. You know, the whole allure of Tinseltown, you know, it's like peeking behind the curtain on Wizard of Oz and just being like, oh, it's this. This is kind of ugly. But as time went on, I worked in other industries. I worked in the medical industry. I worked in sales for a while. And I realized that every other industry is just as bad as that. It can be just as bad as that type of environment. So when the opportunity did come up 4 years later in 2012, when I got this phone call, and it's a whole long story with that, but they basically said like, yeah, we want to offer you a job here at the studio. And I was just like, yes, I'll do it. I already know what to expect. I know how bad it's going to be. I know how intense it's going to be, but I want to do this. I have to do this.
Because you'd regret it if you didn't.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I'd absolutely be kicking myself. There's no way I was going to pass it up. I had already gone through so much other misery in other industries thinking like, well, work is, you know, stressful, but not that stressful. And it turns out it can be that stressful in any other industry. So, yeah, I was happy to go back. And I was like, yeah, throw me into the pits of hell. I'll work with all the crazy people. But that being said, worked with a lot of great people, met a lot of great people there, and I met a ton more celebrities, and after a while, you're just kind of like, whatever. Lots of stories from that time there. I worked there for about 4 years. But at the end of the day, it just really was, that environment was so toxic. It really is just not a place that if you're a creative, if you're somebody who wants to make movies, I don't recommend working at a film studio. I just don't recommend it, because it really is just like this corporatized, cutthroat world. I saw people that had been there for 30 years get fired.
Betrayal.
And just no accountability whatsoever. And there's a lot of like horror stories, things where I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, this is just so unethical, wrong, and lots of things that I've done that I wasn't proud of. And it's just like not the environment you want to be in if you want to be a filmmaker. And while I was working there, I was producing Social Norm. It took a couple of years, and that was like pretty much my time at Sony was accompanied with Social Norm. So that time in my life was just a really stressful time.
What exactly were you doing at Sony, though?
I was working in post-production. It was called the Post Media Center. Basically, it was just like a production hub for when they needed to do all of the mastering and distribution work for all of their assets or new deliverables. So like a new movie comes out, they need to have it dubbed in this version. They need to have closed captions. They need to have it quality controlled, and all the different deliverables out to different networks and territories. All of these deliverables have to be monitored and created and supervised. So I was just kind of thrown in to that, not knowing how it works and just shadowing. And I knew I was going to get a lot of people just being like, who's this dude? Like he doesn't know anything what he's doing. I didn't care. I was like, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to study this. And it took me like a couple months, but I got the hang of it, and I started learning all the technical lingo of like how this all is set up. And as stressful and as crazy as the time was, I learned a lot there. Without question, it was definitely a positive experience in some aspect, because like I learned so much from that, and I screened the movie there. I have a lot of good memories there as well, but it's as equally stressful as it is a positive experience. Eventually, when I got the opportunity to leave, I took it, because I was like, I took what I needed from this place. I'm done here. I want to move on. I want to be more creative. This environment's just not healthy for me anymore. I'm ready to kind of move to the next step. And Social Norm was wrapped at that point. I was like, I'm good. Next stage of life, please. And kind of led me to where I am now. So
I actually had my own kind of experience with like the filmmaking corporate world. I was a script coverage intern at this place, and it was pretty much just they're getting free labor. Like I literally would drive an hour and a half, 2 hours each way for an entire semester at the end of college there. And I was basically just giving script coverage, and they were just getting free labor. And it was like, they just locked us in a room and we just like did script coverage. And I was like, this is like terrible, but like at least I'm getting my internship requirement out of the way. There was that, and then I worked at LA Film School as well, and that one was pretty rough because it was just like you said, kind of cutthroat, and it was very corporate, and most of the stuff I made never even got used. I was in like the marketing department, and there was a lot of events that would happen at the school too, so I would brush shoulders with some of these famous directors and producers and actors. But there was so much red tape. There was so much like they wouldn't allow photos, and you'd have to like tiptoe around these people. And then I would hear all the behind the scenes of people canceling, and not showing up. And it was just like so much garbage that I was like, I am done with this. And then when COVID hit, that was kind of my excuse to get out of there and just pursue other things. But yeah, I was like, man, I'm an indie filmmaker, like from the heart.
I've had to learn this. I feel like in so many ways, like God has like tried to instill this message into me in so many different ways, which is you need to stop relying on other people to tell you that it's time to go make your movie. Like, stop relying on that. Now, I get the conundrum is that like, well, where am I going to get the money? Like, well, I need some help because, you can't do everything by yourself as a filmmaker. Some people might argue you can, but I would argue that your quality would only be so good. But the idea is that you need some help, and it's hard to separate that concept because you're thinking like, okay, well then I need the studio system. I need the big people to help me out with this. I need somebody who's connected, or I need the film festival director to tell me my film's good enough, or I need the producer from whatever studio to tell me like, okay, you're good enough. It's not the case. You really just have to constantly keep pushing to make your own stuff. It's just like, I remember it was Mark Duplass. He's big in the indie world, and he has a very famous speech where he says, like, the cavalry is not coming. You think that, like, if you just write this script, you send it to so-and-so, they like it, they pick it up, you're the golden boy now. Or, you know, same thing, you make a feature film, it's going to get into this festival, or it's going to get on this streaming platform, you'll get noticed, and then the doors will open for you. It's like, nope, that doesn't happen that way. You always have to be fighting for your movie. Do not think that the only path is going to be get it in this person's hands and then we're good. Bad move, because what happens is that you hear these stories, like whether it's the Damien Chazelles or the Kevin Smiths or the Spike Lees or whoever, like they have this story of like making this one movie and then suddenly they blow up and you think that's me, that's who I'm going to be. Turns out like 99% of successful filmmakers did not have that experience. They literally just kept making more and more because they were the drivers of their own success. They weren't waiting to win the lottery. Like, that's just not how it works. And a lot of times this corporatized world of filmmaking, we're just always drawn to the idea of like, well, I need to get into Hollywood and I need to like get an agent and they need to be the ones to tell me to go do this. It's like, I don't take that approach anymore. I've fallen victim to it so many times and it's wasted so much of my time. And I think now I'm just so focused on like building my own stuff and going down that direction. But I get it. It's really easy to fall prey to it. Yeah, it's so easy to just be like, I just need to do this and this person will see me and that's it. That's my ticket in. It's not the case. But yeah, hard lessons to learn.
Yeah. And talk to me about changing your mind on short films. And we can talk about your short films, Don't Hide and Somniphobia, which both are approaching some pretty high view counts, like almost 400,000 views, 400,000 views and almost 1 million views on Somniphobia.
If it had 400,000 views.
So 400,000 views.
I would have ended this right now and be like, I have 400,000 views. And I've been like, dude, I'm rich. But no, yeah, so I actually made another video talking about how I changed my mind on short films because after you do the feature, I've always heard that like the only way to really make your mark as a filmmaker is to make feature films. Like, and that's usually the North Star for most of us. That's the dream. We want to make movies that get seen at the local AMC or the Cineplexes across the US or internationally. Just we want our movies to be seen in the theater. Like that's like the dream. And I was like, okay, yeah, short films, that's not the path. You know, it's almost like a step backwards. You know, why would you do a short film? Well, the catch-22 is that like if you keep assuming that features are the only thing you can do, unless you've gone through that experience before, you don't realize how much time and how much of a high risk it is and how much it's going to take out of you to do that. And bottom line is like how expensive it's going to be to make that. And you'll see all the YouTube videos like, oh, you can make a movie for only a couple $1,000. And I'm like, sure, I don't disagree with that. The problem is quality. And in this day and age, what we have is a oversaturation of content. Like, how do you stand out if you've only spent like $1,000 on your movie? You think your competitors aren't doing that? You're competing for people to watch your movie at this point. I get it. A lot of us as creatives, we don't want to talk about the marketing and distribution side of things because it's just like business and money. Like we just want to think about the shots and the performances and the themes and the story. Like that's the fun stuff. And when it comes to the logistics of that, it's not really the thing we like to talk about. And I realized that short films, although there's not a lot of money in them, there's virtually no money in them, they can serve as a proof of concept for your features. So I said, that's actually a pretty good idea because to me, like, I don't want to spend as much money as I just spent on Social Norm. There was a whole long saga with that. And I was just like, I don't want to go through that again. Yeah, it was way too expensive. I have a wife and kids now. I couldn't do that even if I wanted to. I have like too many responsibilities. So I was like, a short film is a minimal investment. It serves as a proof of concept, or maybe if I want to take the script out to market and get investors, I at least have this as a calling card. And so we made Somniphobia back in early 2020. If you weren't around back then you obviously don't know that was the year that everything fell apart in the world. And we somehow miraculously made that movie in the summer of 2020. It was like right in that time where everything started to semi-open back up. It's like everything shut down from the pandemic. And then they're like, I think everything's open. And we shot it within 4 days. And then like a week later, everything shut down again. So just an absolute miracle that movie got made when it did. And yeah, I learned a lot of lessons from Social Norm and applied that to making this movie. Kind of worked with a friend of mine, Josh Nitschke. It's a great DP. I had my co-producer Matt from Social Norm come help me out with this one again. And we said, like, all right, let's put everything we got into this short film because we can at least prove to whoever that like this would be a movie people would want to see. And fast forward, we released the film online and it started getting a bunch of views and I started getting a bunch of phone calls and texts and stuff like that. And it was something like, wow, this is fantastic. But then I realized that after that was done, I'm back in this boat of, okay, now I'm just relying on other people to tell me it's time to go make the movie. You know, like I'm relying on somebody else to say, go, I'll make this for you. And I'm just like, cool, I'll just direct it. You know, you produce it. I was like, I can't do this. I'm going to waste more time. And besides that, I was like, all right, I have a lot of doors opened up for me, a lot of at least new connections and people reaching out with the success of the film online. So I said, well, I'll just make another one. Maybe half the budget. I'm not going to like pour everything I just poured into that one again. Let's just like do another quick one. So I did the second one, which was Don't Hide. And that one actually was a lot of fun to shoot. The Somniphobia was actually kind of challenging in some aspects. Like the people were great. I loved working with them and it wasn't a terrible shoot, but it just was a lot. And we were trying to cram a lot into a few days. But Don't Hide, way easier shoot. It was actually a lot of fun. Had a great time with the crew and the cast and probably my favorite shoot I've done. And yeah, we released that one and same thing, like get a bunch of hits. People are like, this is great. I get people reacting to it online. And I'm just like, this is awesome. Like, I really enjoy this because, again, as a filmmaker, you just want people to see your movie. Like, that's like, at the end of the day, that's really what you want. Yes, I want it to be at the megaplex and I want to be on the silver screen. Like, that's ultimately where I want it to be. And having it be released on YouTube is not always as satisfying, but it's still enough to be like, this is what I want to do. I want to get it out in front of people. And people hate this a lot, but nowadays, I think the only way to really find success as a filmmaker is to establish your brand. I know that's the B word. We don't like to say that a lot because it's just so like, oh, like it sounds so marketing and cliche. But it really is true. Like you have to establish yourself as a unique storyteller. You know, like what makes you different? Why should people watch yours versus somebody else's? And the example I always give is that like, what if I told you that there was two movies and you could only watch one of them and they were both about Oppenheimer? And one was directed by somebody who you've never heard of, and the other one was directed by Christopher Nolan. Which one are you going to watch? I think we all know which one we'd pick. So the reason being is that we all know Christopher Nolan has established himself as a credible filmmaker, and that's branding, man. Like that's all what it comes down to. So if you want to like claw your way through the filmmaking ladder and try to get more people to see your stuff and try to get more eyeballs on your films and try to establish yourself as an artist, you kind of have to just keep building up that brand and make more and more stuff. And that's where short films, I think, are actually a very feasible approach because feature films take forever. They take a long time and I want to do more of them without question. But I'm like, right now, I just want to build more and more of a brand so that when the time comes to make the feature, I have in that built-in audience already. I have the leverage of saying, I've made all this stuff for you guys and you liked it. I made this big one now come see it. And I think that's the approach I want to take going forward. So short films, I've changed my mind on them. I actually just shot another one. I'll be releasing one in next spring. And somehow I got into horror. I don't really know how that happened, but it just did.
Can we drop the name of the next one?
I'm pretty confident, this is going to be the title. You're never sure until you like officially announce it. But yeah, the title of this one's called Vice Grip.
Nice. That sounds hardcore. I like that.
Yeah. It's similar in the nature. The first two shorts I did were all about nightmares and dreams. And this one, it's been a long road. I'll do a whole making of and where it came from. But the short version is that I wanted it to be kind of like the part 3 capper to the trilogy of these short films leading up to it. So it's like Somniphobia is part 1, Don't Hide is part 2, Vice Grip is part 3. It's an anthology series. They're not connected per se, other than just they're all made by me and they all deal with nightmares. But after this one, I want to next year hopefully make 2 more shorts that aren't horror. I'll see about that. I'm still kind of brainstorming, but I want to make a lot more short film content soon. And I'm actually going to be producing a lot more stuff soon. And I'm really, really excited about it. And yeah, this latest film, it's about celebrity and fame culture. That's the desired dream. You know, like I just want to be known. I want to be seen. which is inherently true. Like, we all want to be recognized. You don't want to be like the loner or a loser or something like that. But they want to just be famous. And I have nothing against anybody that has fame because they built something. But if you want to be famous just for the sake of being famous, like, that's wrong. And so, yeah, that's what my next horror film is kind of alluding to, that as a woman dealing with nightmares about that. But interesting concept. But anyway, shoot went well. No major issues. It was a lot of work, but I won't lie. Like, I don't know if this next film is going to work. Like, I just don't know. Everyone keeps asking me, how is it? And I'm like, I'm not going to lie to you. Everybody would tell you that, like, oh, it's going to be great. And I'm like, it might be. I don't know. I feel good about it, but it's just like, I don't know. We'll find out. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, I'm excited to see that. And you asked earlier about like my next film and my plans and stuff. And
yeah,
I was just going to say, I was really inspired by your video on changing your mind about short films. And I was thinking about the whole proof of concept idea a lot more, because I'm so not interested in making shorts just for the sake of making shorts, because it feels like a waste of time and energy and money. But if you're viewing it as, oh, this is a proof of concept to go make a feature later, it's like, oh, that's something I could actually get on board with, and something I hadn't thought about in a while. And something I was thinking that would be interesting would be shooting a proof of concept and shooting like chronologically the first part of the feature. Like, what if you were to shoot the first 13 pages,
right,
and then you release that online, and then it gains buzz, it gains traction, and then you're able to show the investors or whoever, hey, this is what the first part of the movie is. And if you're able to do it right, then you could just pick up from there once you get more money coming in, and you could kind of go complete the rest of the film in stages. So that's kind of an idea that I've had in my mind for a little bit. And so I thank you for sparking that idea. But yeah, that's something I'm thinking about.
If it doesn't work out for you, please don't call me up and be like, this is all your fault.
Yeah, I give you the credit and also the blame.
Yeah, pretty much.
But, you know,
I'll take all the
Stranger
credit
Things did that with, obviously the whole show was finished, but when it came time for release day for season 1 and season 4, they released like the first 10 minutes of each season on YouTube. And I remember being really hyped on that and just thinking, if you have a compelling first part of your movie, it's like, that's a really cool way to get people hooked and then just continue on from there.
It is so oversaturated nowadays. I mean, the democratization of filmmaking with the digital era has allowed us to make movies. That's awesome. Like, I wouldn't have been able to make Social Norm as it was had this been 30 years ago. I probably just wouldn't have been able to do it, because it would have been 4 times as expensive. We would have to be filming on some Super 16 or something like that. It would just be something where we wouldn't have the capability of doing it unless we really did go all in on it. And now with having digital cameras, you know, people can shoot stuff on their iPhones and it look half decent. So the now question becomes like, how do you stand out? What is the way in which you can compete against all of the content that we have to choose from? And that's kind of the struggle as a new filmmaker, is you're like, yeah, I can make stuff more easily, but it's a lot more difficult to get your stuff seen. And this is where quality will outweigh quantity every time. And as much as I would rather be doing a feature film, I pour as much effort into that short film as I would a feature. I think that the mistake we make, though, is that we assume that if only I had like $1 million, then I would be good. You know, if only I just had Tom Cruise in my movie, then things would be great. I don't think that's true. I think that you really only grow as a filmmaker after you've kind of failed 1,000 times. I can appreciate that when you were talking about Space Waves in the behind the scenes videos in the documentary you did, about like just how much effort it took to make that. And there was a part of that documentary that I was kind of like bummed you skipped over it a little bit. You just kind of like, maybe you didn't want to talk about it because it was too personal, but it was the post-production process. You shared everything about the production process, but the post-production process, it seems like something happened. Like something didn't go according to plan. Like it took 2 years, and we kind of got like little bits here and there. And again, I don't want to pry if it's a personal thing, but it does seem like you get your butt kicked in post-production. Something happened. And I'm like, that's when you become a filmmaker.
Yeah.
It's those moments where you're like, I am defeated. I am just destroyed. I don't know what else this movie needs from me in order to just be out there. And then to prevail past that and to say, I want to do that all over again is when you know you got it in you. That's when you know you really got it in you. Because you've gone through hell.
Yes.
And you're like, this sucks. Like, this just flat out sucks. There was nothing fun about this. And then it's all over and you're like, I want to do that again. Like, that's when you know, like, you're a filmmaker at that point.
That's really good. Yeah, well, you asking about post-production, it just took another couple years of post-production simply because we ran out of money. And so it was 2 years of Andrew and I both, having graduated film school and now like working minimum wage jobs right out of college. And we're the only ones that are putting money into the movie. And so it was just a really long, slow journey of like, hey, we're going to save up for 6 months and we'll have a few $1,000s and then we'll put that towards sound. And then we'll put that towards color and then, do it over again. Then we'll put that towards scoring and this and that, And so it was just a lot of really long and slow process of getting money and putting it into things. And also like, we spent 8 months with a sound designer who then accidentally deleted the entire project. And so we had to start over from scratch. And that was just like, dude, unbelievable, And there was plenty of other things in post-production that went so horribly wrong. But at the end of the day, it didn't make as interesting for content for like watching a documentary about it. So we did kind of skip over some things just so that the narrative of the documentary felt a little more cohesive, because some of those things, it's like, what are we gonna do? We're just gonna show footage of Andrew and I sitting around like being like, hey, we don't have money, like, it still has to be kind of compelling as a documentary. Yeah, and the documentary and the whole experience was already so long anyway. I mean, the film from writing and pre-production to distribution online was 5 years and $50,000, so it was a massive undertaking, and making Beast Mode was a whole nother undertaking as well. I mean, that was our 45-minute feature-length documentary, so that was a whole nother thing. But we wanted to make these two features. We wanted to make Space Waves and we wanted to make a companion documentary. At the beginning, it was just going to be like a little 20-minute behind-the-scenes look of Space Waves, and then because of everything going wrong with Space Waves and how long it took and just all the adventures, it was like this documentary, because it was like every time we interviewed a cast or crew, they would talk for like 3 hours, and it was like, dude, now we have like 10 people at 3 or 4 hours each, and so we have like 40 hours of interview footage that we have to go through. And so the whole experience took forever, and it was a complete blast, and it was an amazing project. But at the end of the day, it was kind of like, we have to wrap this up, we have to finish this and just get the documentary finished, get the movie finished. And it's never going to be perfect, but put it out there. We got it out on streaming services for purchase and rental. We had it out for a year, but it was still behind a paywall. And then after a year had gone by, it was kind of dead in the water. I mean, like, we weren't really making much money on the film. It still hadn't been seen by very many people. Just didn't really have a whole lot of options. We had gone through some different sales agents and had expectations that weren't met, and things just didn't work out. And so eventually we were like, all right, Space Waves has been out for a year, but how about now we put it on YouTube and see what happens for free? It was kind of like, we want to make money on the film, but at the end of the day, your first movie needs to be more about exposure than about the money, because the exposure will lead to more projects, and that'll lead to more money in the future and all that. So that's what we did. And, now the film is generating a lot of views on YouTube, kind of slowly but surely. But yeah, that was the windy path we took with Space Waves.
I demand a second documentary just chronicling the horrors of that post-production, because the fact that the sound tech, you said, are like deleted 8 months worth of work, I felt my soul leave my body once you said that. I was just like, oh my gosh, dude, if that happened, that sounds horrible, man.
Yeah, and another thing too is we had a main hard drive failure. Dude. Our hard drive, when we plugged it in, it literally started smoking and like blew up. And we had everything on the backup drive, so we thought we had everything except one scene. And so it was like, no, one scene was missing. So then it was like, okay, do we try to reshoot this scene? But it was like, it just didn't make sense to try to reshoot this scene. And it was like, okay, I guess it would be better to pay for a hard drive recovery center to, recover the footage and stuff. And so that's what we ended up having to do. And so that set us back another 6 months because we had to pay like $2,500 or $3,000 to salvage this footage, man, and so it was like, there was just plenty of things like that. Yeah, it was pretty depressing and pretty dark for a while just to get this film done.
Yeah, man, that's heartbreaking. I mean, when I say heartbreaking, I don't mean that to be hyperbolic. I mean, that literally sounds like that would break your heart.
Yeah.
Because you pour so much of your time and effort to make this thing happen, and then just to have it fall apart would just be beyond devastating. And I don't think anybody understands like how much you give yourself to each film. And so when something like that happens, it really is like, it's more than a gut punch. It's like a soul punch. It's just like, I don't know. I just don't know if I'm equipped to do this. You start questioning everything when stuff like that happens. It sucks. But yeah, I'm glad it worked out and you got through it, because yeah, to hear that is like, oh, dude. I don't think I've had anything that bad happen. I've had some bad ones, but not that bad.
Well, do you know about the tower?
I saw the behind the scenes on that. You guys just getting up there. It didn't look like anybody got hurt or anything, but I don't know anything about what happened with the tower. But
so I wrote Space Waves about a tower in my hometown of Grass Valley, right? And this tower had been up there for 50 or 60 years. It's called AT&T Long Lines. They used to have towers all across the U.S. The technology went out of date real quick, so there's all these abandoned radio towers across the U.S.
Right.
Microwave technology is what it was. So we go up to shoot Space Waves on day one. And as we get up to this tower that's been there for, 60 years, in this place that I grew up going to in high school, just adventuring on, as we get up there to shoot, there are literally tractors demolishing the tower in front of our eyes on day one.
Dude.
So the entire movie was falling apart, like right in front of my eyes. And that one was the most heartbreaking, because it was like, we show up to NorCal, we have our crew, our cast, we have all our equipment, and we're going to be up there for 2 weeks to shoot, and our main location is destroyed. And we don't even know if there's another tower out there. We don't even know like what we're going to do. That was one of those moments where Andrew, the producer, and I, we had to have really tough decision and be like, you know what, we believe that we're supposed to make this film. We believe that God is with us and that we're going to do this. And so we're going to shoot the rest of the movie as is, with the characters referring to the tower and referencing it. And we are just going to walk in faith that we're going to find a replacement tower sometime later. And so that's what we did. We shot the movie, and then it took us 9 months to find another tower that we could shoot on. Jeez. And so the tower that you see in the final film, that one was shot in San Rafael County, and that took us 9 months to secure that tower, because all these towers are owned by different corporations that no one will ever let you film up on top of a radio tower. They're like, we tell them, hey, we're young filmmakers and, we'd like to shoot on your radio tower. And they're like, get effed, and they just hang up on us, because it's like, they don't want us to just fall off and die and sue them for all they're worth, So it took us 9 months to find that tower. And as Rudy says in the Beast Mode documentary, he says, when something doesn't work out, we find something better, and that's what it was. It was like this new tower that we got ended up being so much better. It plays a lot better on film, it's symmetrical. It works, for the poster and everything. Yeah. And we actually did it right that time. We had a safety coordinator who helped us out. We had harnesses. The characters are wearing harnesses under their clothes, so they're actually clipped onto the tower. That's why you never see them stand up or walk around on the tower. They're literally like harnessed in, Yeah. And so we did it right. And had we done it the first time, we would have just been like wandering up there ourselves, with no safety equipment, no guidance or anything. So I think God was watching over us and protected us. And the final product was a lot better than if it had gone according to plan.
Absolutely. Yeah. God works in mysterious ways sometimes, but yeah, it's easily the best set piece in the movie you have. And yeah, that opening shot you have, with the drone footage, is like, wow, man, that's like a really cool opening shot, and just kind of establishes the tone. And what I liked about your film too, and this is true, because me and my wife, I was like, this guy messaged me, he wants me to be on his podcast, we should watch his film. And she was like, yeah, sounds good. It was Halloween, I think is what it was. And I was like, we got to watch a horror movie though. I'll watch this guy's movie like tomorrow or something. And I was like, let's watch Talk to Me, the new horror movie that everyone was talking about. And we watch it, and it was okay. The movie was fine. It was like, okay, it had some creepy moments to it, but wasn't exactly floored. And then when my wife and I were talking about it, we were just like, you know what I didn't like about the movie is I didn't like the characters. The characters just didn't, they didn't like, just kind of, they're kind of annoying. But then the next night we watched your movie and we're like, okay, indie film, I know what to expect. I mean, my film is probably the same. And I watched it, and after it was over, I told my wife, I was like, I genuinely liked that movie. I liked that more than the movie we watched last night. And I think what it was is because I liked the characters. I really did. I liked the characters a lot. And maybe it was a lot of it attributed to the actors that you picked because they just had this really personable, maybe it's that young, fresh, coming of age vibe. You know, it's like they're right out of high school or something like that. And they're just kind of goofing around. Like, that's that really fun age of like, it's not the high school years. It's like post high school years. It's like kind of mid college years. And you're like, those are fun times, man. And, you know, it seems a little mature, and I really enjoyed the atmosphere to it. And yeah, genuinely enjoyed it just because I think you focused on the right things. You focused on getting a good set piece there to kind of like set the tone that this is a pretty well put together production. And then you also focused on characters and story. And that I really appreciated, because a lot of times I'll see people swap and do the reverse. Is like, it's all about the production and the set value and all that stuff, trying to make it look glossy. And like, I don't care about that stuff. Just, can you tell a compelling story? Are your actors going to sell it to me? And they did. And I was like, I like this. I genuinely did. I liked it more than Talk to Me. And everyone's talking about that movie. And I'm like, they should be talking about Space Waves, man. That's what they should be talking about right now.
Thank you. I really appreciate the kind words. I'm glad you liked it. And yeah, it was everyone's first movie. So there was a lot of excitement. And I think that really translated. And everyone was friends too. And I think that came through in the film as well. You know, just like, yeah, they naturally worked well together. And also, you were talking about the story and the themes and stuff. That was like the main part too for me, was like, I needed to make a film that was about this story, because this was about myself and my best friend in high school, how we had our falling out towards the end of high school, and how just growing up and getting to that young 20s age, it's like, life takes people in many different directions and you're never really prepared for it. And so I wanted to make a movie that kind of showed that, and also showed that, like, if you hold on to things and you can't be flexible and you don't accept the changing of life seasons, it can really drive you into bitterness and resentment. And so that's what we showed with Marvin being alone in the second half. And, you know, the first half is much more comedy, and then the second half is much more of a friendship breakup drama. But yeah, I just wanted to show that, you know, towards the end, it was like he was able to find forgiveness and just realize that, hey, it's okay. And just because it's an ending, it doesn't mean it has to be a sad or a bitter ending. Like, we can still make this a good ending, even though we are going separate ways and life moves on. But it doesn't ruin all the good memories that we had together.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. It kind of has that nostalgia factor. I mean, Social Norm is a coming of age as well, and it deals with the idea of like having a hard time letting go of the past and just that transition in life of, you know, not all transitions are bad. Yes, we're apprehensive to it because it's different and we're not sure and there's a lot of uncertainty, but you got to have that faith that shows that you're like, okay, things aren't only doomed to be worse than they already were, or something like that, where you're always thinking like, well, life was only going to be as good as it was when I was a kid, and I had a lot of fun as a kid, but now I have kids. I'm happily married and I love my life. I'd rival my 30s to my kid years any day of the week, man. Like, I'm enjoying life right now. There's a lot of hard times growing up and you go through these challenges, but that doesn't mean that like life is over once you hit 25 or something. It's like, no, like life is almost kind of beginning in some aspects, and getting married and having kids now and making movies is like, I'm as happy as I've ever been, honestly, with where I'm at in life. And a lot of that is attributed to my faith as well. I've started taking my faith a lot more seriously and focusing on that. Like, you know, obviously I've strayed in many different ways and I'm not perfect by any means, but incorporating God into my life a lot more and then focusing on my family and focusing on God, and has actually made me want to become a better filmmaker. And in some ways, like, you think that's not the case. Like, oh, I just got to focus on being a filmmaker and then, you know, I'll make time for God later. But it's actually the reverse. Like, I've made time for God now, and then it's suddenly made my life tremendously better in terms of my career and my personal life. And yeah, it's just like changed my life completely.
Yeah. Yeah, and that theme of space waves, kind of like you're saying, but the actual theme that we had like written down and stated like in the premiere speech and stuff is it's a movie about letting go of how things were, embracing how things are, and knowing that although times change, friendship and adventure can be found in every season of life, right? And so it's like, it's a message of you can still find friendship, you can find adventure, but it might take a little work or it might look a little different than you expected, but it's like, don't just throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? As they say, when times change and, life seasons change. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up your faith. And that was kind of the last question I wanted to talk about is like how you're incorporating your faith more into your life and into your films. And I actually listened to a sermon today and it was talking about who's serving who. And so it's funny you're talking about how, the more you submit and the more you give your life over to God and the more you focus on serving him and living with him, the more you see your dreams actually be realized and the more you actually enjoy your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And short version is like about 5-6 years ago, I just said like, you know what, I need to take my faith a lot more seriously. I put it on the back burner all during the time that I was at Sony or trying to make Social Norm. I was so focused on just career. I got to make a lot of money. I got to build my life as a filmmaker. I'm going to go through whatever it takes just to make this happen. And as time went on, I just realized like, I'm not doing this right. I need to put God first. I need to put him first. And I had already established my faith a long time ago. I didn't go through a crisis of faith during that time. I did that back in my teen years, but I was already a believer in God, but I just wasn't acting as a good Christian. So I said, I need to change my perspective on this. Put God first. I think it's Carrie Underwood, that song, Jesus Take the Wheel. My cousin has a funny phrase where it's like, Jesus, I need you to jerk the wheel. I need you to like get me off this course as quickly as possible. That's what happened to me, is that like once I made that decision and I just started listening to God and said, what do you need me to do? And within a year of making that decision, I knew I was going to be marrying the woman I was dating at the time, which is now my wife. I was like, I got married. Within a year after that, I had my son. With a little over a year later, I had my daughter. And after that, like I made Somniphobia. I had a massive success come from that. I had Don't Hide, success from that. All these new things happening. So in the last 5-6 years, my life has just been this biggest course correction ever in terms of like where I'm going with my life. But aside from that, what I've been focused on for the last year specifically is, okay, like I can keep making horror films and I can make a feature about whatever, but there's still that aspect of, okay, I want to make a horror film. I'm a Christian, do Christians make horror films? That seems like a contradiction. And I spent a lot of time, praying about it, researching it, kind of diving into the Bible, going to study groups and trying to understand more of this, talking to my local pastor about it, like, should I be doing this? Like, it's not right to like scare people, right? But then you don't realize that once you actually learn more about Christ is that Christ told a bunch of parables. He told a bunch of stories. And one of the stories that stands out to me that just, wow, it's crazy is, I think he talks about it in the other Gospels, but in Luke in particular, there's the story about the rich man and Lazarus. And just to paraphrase the story real quick is that a rich man denies Lazarus, this poor man, into his house to give him food. Eventually, they both die in their latter years. And in hell, the rich man sees Lazarus standing next to Abraham in safe comfort distance while the rich man is being tortured. And he's like, please save me.
He says, just a drop of water, just dip your finger in water to touch my tongue.
Just please, I'm begging for a drop of water. And Abraham's like, no. And so they're like, you had your chance, man. Like you blew it. And then the rich man's like, could you at least just go warn my brothers about this, please, so that they don't have to endure this as well? And the most cold delivery ever is just Abraham says, like, they have the prophets just like you did. They have the word of Moses just like you did. And I'm like, dude, that's a horror story. That is a bona fide horror story from the lips of Christ himself. Like, he's telling a horror story. Now, regardless if that's actually a literal story that happened versus just an actual parable or an allegory, doesn't matter. It's like you can take stories that are horrific and use them for well-intentioned meanings or themes. And to me, like the thing that I want to see more of is my faith represented in a real fashion. Not like, I have nothing against the Hallmark Christian movies that you typically would hear of, like the God's Not Dead or the whatever, fill in the blank. We've all heard of a faith-based movie that is usually pretty corny, usually pretty cheesy. It's got melodramatic plots, and you're just like, this is not really...
Preaching to the choir.
Yeah, it kind of is. It's like a circular thing. We're just talking to ourselves. I have nothing against them. God bless you all. Go make your movies, do your thing. There's nothing wrong with preaching the word of God in that way. Fine. But I think that we make better films that actually convey these Christian themes in a realistic fashion while not also undercutting and committing unethical and sinful content in doing so. For example, it's like, I don't need to make a film that is sexually explicit to explain that adultery is bad. I don't need to show that. I can convey it in other ways and not have it be undermined or make my point undermined by actually committing the sin itself on camera. So it's a balancing act, and that's actually something I'm going to be exploring more on my channel soon. It's just talking about those different types of content and themes and how we can make movies that encompass better representations of our faith that seem more real and authentic, like Angel Studios that just did Sound of Freedom recently. They seem like they're kind of doing the same thing. They're not there to preach to you the sermon. They're there to make a good movie that has these themes woven into them. And I think there's a huge audience out there for that. And that's the kind of stuff I want to make, is that although I'm making horror movies, and I don't blame you for not want to watch a horror movie. If no one wants to do that, then yeah, by all means. But if you're going to tell me that horror is not biblical, I'm like, I got news for you, man. Like, have you read the Bible? That's filled with a lot of horror stories. I mean, the whole point of like Christ's story is it involves him being tortured to death. Like, that's a horror story. I guess it has a good ending, but there is definitely some horrific elements in there. Like, you cannot separate the two. So yeah, I don't think that we can just assume that showing something that's intense or dark is immediately not godly. I think that's not correct. I think it's actually written into the story of our past and who we are. And I think people respond to that the more you show things that are authentic and a better representation of reality, not just like so-and-so is not sure about their faith and we're going to invite them over for dinner and it's a quirky comedy. It's like, it's fine, you can do that, but I think people want to see stuff that's intense, and you can even do stuff that doesn't even reference God at all. I mean, look at Lord of the Rings. It's known as like one of the greatest Christian series ever. You never hear the word God or Christ mentioned in those movies. And as far as I haven't read the books, but I don't think you hear it mentioned in the books either. It's because it's all representation and imagery pointed to the art itself. So I think that's the kind of stuff I'm going to be focusing on, is like, we can make better movies. We cannot cross certain lines, but we can make better movies that are darker and more intense and are real. And that speaks to people more. So that's kind of what I want to do, is start incorporating these Christian themes into movies more and talking about that with other people.
That's amazing, man. And that's exactly why I reached out to you, because I'm on that same wavelength and I love what you're doing, and I want to be doing the same thing with my films and with my stories. So where can people connect with you and follow you?
DillonVibbart.com. That's Vibbart. And I spell my name Dillon like Matt Dillon, not like Bob Dylan. I understand that. And there's only one I. For some reason, I get a lot of people say Dillon. That is not correct. It is Dillon. It is not Dillon. It is Dillon. It's happened to me so many times that I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why that happens. It's like a thing. But yeah, you can find me there on my website, or you can just look up my films on YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I just recently started an X account, a Twitter account. So I'm a newbie there, but those are basically my only two social platforms that I'm like posting to at the moment. But I'll be posting a lot more stuff there soon. So yeah, you can check me out there and just look up Somniphobia, Don't Hide, Dillon Vibbart. You'll find me.
Sweet. Thanks for joining me. That was really fun and just good to talk with you about all this stuff.
Of course, if you ever need anything else, just reach out. I like building the network. I get so many people that reach out to me and that talk about, whatever, but I always like want to talk to the people that have been through this before, the ones that actually have gotten their feet wet, and they're not asking me to like help me make their movie yet. It's like, no, have you made your own? Have you gone through it? Like, have you actually experienced it? So if you need anything, since you've kind of done it, I'm like, all right, he knows what's up. We're doing the same thing, you and I, but I'm like 5 years ahead. Yeah, it sounds like you're the kind of person I definitely would want to be working with in the future. So yeah, just let me know, man.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor, leave a review. 5 stars is a power play. I'd really appreciate it. As always, stay tuned, stay hyped. That's a wrap.
And that's it.